here to tell you about the Radio Kingston Underwriting Program, a unique opportunity for businesses in the greater Kingston area to reach and engage with WKNY's community-minded listeners through targeted sponsorship messages. Underwriting announcements are short branding statements about your business and the products or services you provide. It is your message of support for Radio Kingston as a community resource. Proceeds from the underwriting program fuel the Radio Kingston Community Fund, which helps Kingston community members in immediate need of financial assistance and supports other community initiatives. Our goal is to support folks in the community and the supporters of our community while keeping the money in our community. For more information about the Radio Kingston Underwriting Program, email underwriting@radiokingston.org.
Hi, I'm Forest Ranger Cameron Sweeney from the Department of Environmental Conservation. We're reminding all New Yorkers that a spring burn ban is now in effect. With a drier than normal winter, it's even more important people adhere to the ban through May 14th. Open burning of debris is the single largest cause of spring wildfires in the state. Wildfires are more likely to spread in warm, windy conditions.
I'm Kingston Mayor Steve Noble, and in the city of Kingston, we have a year-round burn ban, but backyard grills are fine. Any sort of cooking fire must never be left unattended.
For more information, go to dec.ny.gov.
Or click kingston-ny.gov/air quality.
Radio Kingston.
Muchas voces.
Muchas voces.
Muchas voces.
Una comunidad.
Hola amigues, I am Mariel Fiori. Every Monday through Friday morning from 10 to 11 a.m. we have La Voz con Mariel Fiori here at Radio Kingston. It's an inspiring hour of interviews, commentary, good music, current issues and information. Knowledge is power. And it's all en español. La Voz with Mariel Fiori. Every weekday morning from 10 to 11 a.m. Here on Radio Kingston, AM 1490, FM 1079, or anytime at radiokingston.org.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speaker or guest and do not necessarily reflect those of the management or staff of Radio Kingston WKNY, AM 1490, FM 1079, Kingston, New York.
Welcome to The Long Way Round. Thank you to Kiala Kelly, Liz Hill, and Tiokasin Ghosthorse for First Voices Radio. Always an important voice for our world to understand the perspective of Indigenous peoples everywhere. My name's Malcolm Byrne. You're listening to The Long Way Round. This is Radio Kingston, WKNY. And tonight my very special guest is Rabbi Dovid Feldman. Dovid Feldman is a spokesman for Neturei Karta International, an organization founded in the 1930s in Jerusalem to protect the Jewish community from the new Zionist movement. Over the past few decades, NKI has been actively publicizing the voice of many Jewish communities around the world against the Zionist ideology, the Zionist state, and its crimes committed against the Palestinian people. They explain to the world the distinction between Judaism and Zionism, that the relatively new Zionist movement is a rebellion against God, and that it does not represent the Holy Torah, nor the entire Jewish people. Rabbi Feldman and his colleagues frequently appear at public demonstrations, university lectures, and pro-Palestinian conferences, as well as regularly giving television and radio interviews. They often fly to countries around the world, including many Arab countries, to express their sympathy with the suffering and support of the Palestinian people. They meet with political and religious leaders and have been very successful in building bridges between the Jewish and Arab communities. Among their numerous trips, Rabbi Feldman and his colleagues have visited the besieged Gaza Strip multiple times, where they've delivered truckloads of medical aid, including an ambulance, purchased with donations they have collected. They were warmly received there, as in all Arab countries. Welcome, shalom, to the show, Rabbi Dovid Feldman. So grateful to have you, and honored, of course.
Thank you. It's my honor.
So I am very familiar with you because I've seen you many times on the internet, showing up at various, usually pro-Palestinian gatherings. And the first time I saw you, I was almost shocked. I was surprised, to be honest. And then I listened to you speak, and I thought, okay, there's something I don't know that's being explained to me for the very first time that I don't even understand. And I'd like you to sort of, for the listeners, give me just a bit of background for yourself and also your movement and why you think now is particularly crucial time.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And it's exactly that point that you say, that you were shocked the first time you saw us. That's basically the reason why we do and why we are so involved in all these activities, because we realize that people are unaware to the reality of Judaism. And unfortunately, it's our religion, the Jewish religion, and our people, the Jewish people, who are totally misrepresented by today's movement of Zionism, today's state of Israel, which on purpose, this Zionist movement is doing everything they can to give this image as if all Jews support their movement and as if all Jews support all their crimes against the Palestinian people, and if the Jewish religion condones all what the state of Israel does. And unfortunately, the masses of people follow this mainstream media, Zionist propaganda, and people have very limited ability to know anything better than that. And now it's way better than decades ago. You know, if you go back like 30 years ago, nobody didn't know anything other than what mainstream media will tell them. Today, with alternative media, with shows like yours and other honest people who are helping the general public to be exposed to some basic truth, basic facts, which unfortunately is being hidden. You know, without this information, unfortunately, people are totally misled. Now, to explain a little bit more, first and foremost, we have to understand what we're dealing about. We're dealing about the state of Israel, which is not only committing crimes against Palestinian people, which at least today people are very aware. And people sometimes are so puzzled, how come, you know, people of a religion, people who are known to be the people of God, committing all these crimes? It doesn't make really sense. But in order to understand all of this, we have to first and foremost understand there's a great difference between Judaism and Zionism. And this basically explains the overall picture, what we are seeing. Judaism is a religion, and a religion only. This is a religion of 3,000 years. Nothing about nationalism. There is no condition in Judaism that we have to have a nationalism in order to be Jewish, in order to be loyal to God, in order to follow the Jewish religion. Yes, once upon a time when we had a Holy Land, there were special commandments in regards to the Holy Land. If we don't have a land, then those commandments no longer apply to us. But again, it's not a condition. In other words, I myself, I happen to be an American Jew. I'm Jewish by the religion I follow, and I'm American by nationality. And there is no contradiction there. Why? Because the religion is nothing about nationalism. But when you see this movement of Zionism, it's something totally different. It's basically attempting to transform Judaism from a religion into a nationalism. God forbid you no longer have to follow God and his religion. You just have to support this national movement of Zionism. Now, this is not only a violation of Judaism, this is an uprooting of the very essence of Judaism. And sadly, you find today masses unfortunately, embarrassingly enough, I say, it's the majority of Jewish people who no longer follow God and his religion and identify with the movement of Zionism. In other words, how they see their Jewish identity is only about nationalism. And just to explain a bit more, I'll tell you a little story I had. I was once on a plane from London to New York. I come into the plane. There is a gentleman sitting at the window seat. I sit down in the aisle seat. There's an empty seat between us. I say hello, and I fall asleep. Once I wake up, I see the Haaretz newspaper on the empty seat between us. And obviously, I understand that the person next to me is a Zionist. And, we go into a very nice, polite, respectful discussion, which is fine. I try to explain my views about Israel, and then he tries to explain his views. And then we come to a point where that Zionist gentleman says, regardless whether you are right or wrong, I would never give it up. I risked my life in the army. I would never give it up. Now listen to what I told him. I said to him like this: I totally understand where you come from. And here's a very, very important point. And I told him what I said before. All what makes me Jewish is my religion, regardless of my nationality. If I don't have a Jewish nationality, nothing is missing from my Judaism. Versus other people that for one reason or another don't follow the religion of Judaism. And again, we're not the people to judge the individual, but for one reason or another, they don't follow Judaism. Now, all that defines them Jewish is only this nationalism. Now, what happens when this nationalism comes to a point where it comes under question mark? If something is wrong with that nationalism, and either the world stands up and says, something is wrong, or the individual wakes up and see that something doesn't make sense. This is not Judaism. This doesn't make sense. This is not, this is not humane. Then what happens is it's not only that this national movement comes under a question mark. Unfortunately, it's his Judaism that comes under question mark. And this is something that nobody can tolerate because no one wants to give up their Jewish identity. But what I explained to that gentleman is that this tragedy that your Judaism comes under question mark doesn't start today with our conversation when we are raising some critics against the state of Israel. This calamity started when Zionism first began, when they first attempted to transform Judaism from a religion into a nationalism. That's the point when our religion was so badly attacked and destroyed to a certain point. And that's considered to Jewish people as a true tragedy. In addition to all what the movement of Zionism is doing to others, it is truly harmful and uprooting the very basics of Judaism. Now, this is even before going into details. This is just overall the actual philosophy, the approach of that Zionism took. It's also, different. When the movement of Zionism came about, it took a different angle than many other movements amongst Jewish people that left Judaism. Because before Zionism, when one would leave Judaism, well, there was a reform movement also in the same way. But if we go back before reform, if an individual or a group will choose to drop Judaism, then simply they leave Judaism and they take any other approach. But what Zionism did is upholding, keeping the name Judaism and transforming it into something else. Now, in addition to what they are going in the wrong direction according to Judaism, they are basically harming that Judaism that they misrepresent. This is just very, very basic, a very basic uprooting of our religion. But in addition to that, it's basically a movement which is uprooting each and every rule of Judaism, generally speaking. But when we come to the story of Palestine, it's committing so many crimes which people see as crimes in international law, but we say as religious people, all what is being done to Palestine is not only a violation of international law, it's a violation of Jewish law. Killing, stealing, oppressing an entire people happens to be that same people that were kind to us for hundreds of years, respectful to us, hosted us, and protected us. This is unfair, and this is not Jewish. I would like to add, in addition to all these crimes being done to Palestine, it happens to be that the philosophy of Zionism, the philosophy of building a sovereign homeland for the Jews, those Jews in exile, those Jews who were suffering for so long, those Jews who went through the horrors of the Holocaust, all of this is true history. Now delivering to this Jewish people this beautiful, brilliant idea of having a solution to the Jewish problem. It's a very nice, beautiful idea, but it happens to be in total contrast of basics of Judaism. And this is very important to understand in order to realize and understand that how far away this is from Judaism and how much this does not represent Judaism. Now, there's a very basic concept in Judaism, happens to be one of the basics of Jewish belief, is a concept of exile. Yes, there is a concept being used always in Zionist propaganda, the promised land. God promised the land for the Jewish people, which is a true concept. It's a true concept, but we call this Zionist propaganda. And why do we say propaganda if it's true? Because if you take truth and you present it in the wrong way, if you show only one side of the coin and you don't show the other side of the coin, then you are using this in a false way. You can use sometimes some true concepts and it's presenting in a way where you're just presenting falsehood. And here is the example. Yes, there is a concept of the promised land. God has promised the Holy Land for the Jewish people, but, and this is the but that nobody speaks about, and Zionist propaganda will never tell you this. The land was given for the Jewish people on condition. And there's 2 verses in Leviticus which says, the land should not reject you because you defile it. In other words, if you don't keep the land in the level of holiness God requires of you, you would be expelled from the land. There is so many verses speaking about Jewish exile. There is so many verses in the books of the prophets where God warned the Jewish people through the prophets, unless you repent, you would be exiled from the land. Unfortunately, this is what happened several hundred years after the Jewish people were brought into the land. And by the way, according to Judaism, the Jewish people came into the Holy Land not by their physical might, but by the hand of God. Several hundred years later, Jewish people were exiled from the land. At the time, it happened by the hands of the Romans that destroyed the temple and drove the Jewish people into exile. But according to basics of Judaism, this was a divine decree, which Jewish people are required to accept it. This decree of exile, whether it is comfortable or it isn't. And the majority of times it was not comfortable. Recently now, in many countries where we live, we appreciate our leadership. We have a freedom of religion, which is highly appreciated, and we thank our governments for that. Happens to be that Muslim countries were part of these examples, where Muslim countries were so hospitable for the Jewish people, and this is something that we should remember. But again, coming back to the point that Jewish people are required to accept the decree of exile and not fight against it, not fight the decree of God. We are forbidden to fight, to wage wars against any nation. we are required to be loyal citizens in whichever country we reside, regardless whether the government is kind to us or it isn't. We are required to live in peace with our neighbors. Now, all of this was accepted by all Jews throughout all generations, without any exception for the past 2,000 years. There was no question about this until this new philosophy of Zionism came up with a total a different approach. Not only different, it's an approach in the contrast of what it was until then. And this is a very important point. The philosophy of Zionism was not invented by some Jewish scholars who followed Judaism and had some kind of a new approach in line with Judaism. Even if it would have been that, we would question those people coming up with a new philosophy which was unacceptable for thousands of years. But it happens to be way worse than that. We had people, Theodor Herzl and his friends, for over 100 years ago, in the 1800s, which was openly not only secular, but heretic. They hated God and they hated the Jewish religion. They turned their back to the tradition of their own grandparents. And they and only they came up with this philosophy, which is so contrary to all before them. Now, if one really realizes what's going on, there is no way that you can make a mistake and think that this is representing Judaism. This is a new movement, which, it's an XYZ movement. You can call it whatever you like. It's the choice of the individual to follow it or not to follow it. But in any case, you cannot call this Judaism. This is in no way the continuation of generations of Judaism. Now, I always say there is nothing Jewish about the movement of Zionism other than the fact that some people from Jewish descent invented it, and some people from the Jewish communities support it. But it's still in no way does it make it Jewish, religious, or righteous. And in the same time, we have to realize that despite the fact that mainstream media will never tell you this, and despite the fact that people see what we have to say and they get shocked, but it happens to be that masses of Jewish people worldwide disagree with Zionism. Some of them will raise their opposition in public, and you can imagine how difficult that might be. Intimidation, Zionist intimidation from day one is terrible and ridiculous, as so many people are aware about this anti-Semitism accusation. If you dare to speak up against Israel, then you're automatically anti-Semitic, which doesn't make any sense. But this is at least a propaganda tool. But the same kind of approach, they attack Jewish people if they dare to speak up. But you can imagine, if you see so many people out in public, you can imagine how many more people are behind them, supporting them, and sharing this anti-Zionism. I'm in the United States of America. We have a very strong community in New York and in many other states. Europe, this strong community in Europe against Zionism. Canada, and it happens to be in occupied Palestine, in Jerusalem, and in other cities in the Holy Land. We have very strong communities who are very outspoken. You just have to scratch the surface, especially today with alternative media. If you really try to look for it, you will find it, and you will be fascinated by how strong people still hold on to traditional Judaism and insist not to give it up, despite all propaganda of Zionism, despite all tactics of Zionism, despite everything what's going on. And again, let's just come back to what is, today in our days now. All of this would be forbidden. All of this will be in total contrast to Judaism, no question. Even if this will be in total peace, not harming an animal, not harming anyone. Everybody is going to be happy. The entire world will support it. it'll still be in total contrast of basics of Judaism, and Jewish people will in no way accept it. But unfortunately, when this happens in Palestine, by adding so many crimes, especially what we are witnessing in the last couple of months, in like 6 months, basically, we are witnessing this genocide, this mass murder, with all excuses. There is nothing there's nothing there to justify what is going on, this genocide in Gaza. And it's not only in Gaza now, it's already going on for over 16 years in Gaza. As you nicely introduced me before, we visited Gaza in 2009. This was the beginning of the siege, and it was terrible at that time already. We still have the images of Gaza in front of our eyes. It is terrible, and it's way worse now. There's no way to justify this. But it's not only the siege in Gaza. It's an occupation going on for decades, which is, as I said before, it's not only a violation of international law. This is a true violation of Judaism. In no way can this represent the Jewish religion or the Jewish people. It's painful when all of this is being done supposedly in our name. And therefore, we come out in public and we say, no, this is not Judaism. This is not our people. This is not our religion. We are here for justice. We are here to speak up when something is being done wrong, especially when it's being done in our name. And we are here to sanctify the name of the Almighty and saying, no, this is not the Jewish religion in no way. On the contrary, the Jewish religion teaches everything against this movement of Zionism.
I see. Well, that's an incredible, certainly for anyone who's not familiar with the issue at all, that's a great starting point. I really appreciate your patient explanation. Before we take our first little break in about 3 or 4 minutes, I just wanted to mention last night we were invited to attend a screening of a film called Israelism. Are you familiar with this film?
Yeah, I just saw it a week ago.
Yeah. And, well, apart from the fact that the film was made before this current terrible crisis in Gaza and the West Bank, I should never forget to mention the West Bank. You can only imagine how much worse it must be. But what was really interesting was there was I forget the gentleman's name, who he's Jewish, and he went to, he was brought up to believe that Israel was the place to go and learn Hebrew. He went to the Hebrew school, and eventually he ended up going to Israel and joining the IDF. And then he woke up to see what was really happening. And he even said, this is not what we were told. Like, if you read the Torah properly, it doesn't say in there to go back and recreate a homeland. It says our duty is to go out in the world, the diaspora.
Right. Yeah, it's a right point. And just to explain that a little bit more, what the Jewish people are waiting for, are yearning for, this is also, unfortunately misrepresented by the Zionist movement. The Zionists are trying to say, people are in exile, and then we all are yearning to go back, and this is what we are doing. We are going back to the Holy Land. And again, this is Zionist propaganda, because there is a true concept that Jewish people yearn to come back to the Holy Land. But the question is when, and the question is how. That's even more important. It's not something about a Zionist movement of oppressing another people. We, as I explained before, and I'll elaborate a little bit more, Jewish people are forbidden to end exile by any physical means. What we are waiting for is a spiritual future, which is going to happen by God only. Nothing about human power. This is what ultimate redemption for the Jewish people means. We are waiting that God should redeem humanity, basically. And whatever God will do, and in whichever way he will do it, everyone will accept. It's not something that I'm going to force you, or you are going to force upon me. This is something that we wait for Almighty God to do whatever is fit in his eyes. This is what Judaism is. This is what Judaism teaches. Now, when Zionism comes with this physical return to the Holy Land and presenting this as a religious concept, is again misrepresenting very basic and sensitive issues of Judaism. And this is ridiculous, and this is really terrible. Because what they're doing is they're politicizing spirituality. They are nationalizing a religion. And this is a true destruction to the very essence of the religion. And this happens all the time in all different kinds of ways. And people, Jewish people, need to wake up and realize to drop this anti-Jewish movement. And non-Jewish people have to wake up and realize that this is not Judaism. This does not represent Judaism, regardless which names people give to it. It is in no way a representation of the Jewish religion or of the Jewish people.
Okay. Well, we just have to go to some public service announcements, and when we come back, we have a special treat, a piece of music to play for you. And anyway, I'm speaking to Rabbi Dovid Feldman, who's joined me gracefully. But we'll be right back in a couple of minutes, so please stay tuned. And we'll be right back, as I say.
To foster a more welcoming community, the Ulster County Mano a Mano Coalition is giving you a mini lesson of Quechua, a Mayan language spoken here in Kingston.
Para fomentar una comunidad más acogedora, la coalición Mano a Mano del Condado de Ulster te regala una mini lección de Quechua, una lengua maya que se habla aquí en Kingston.
Allí cuando te ang se comunil te ankeleba se Kingston, shkaba Ulster County Mano a Mano.
Welcome.
Bienvenidos.
Lo la Kulunik.
Lo la Kulunik.
How are you?
¿Cómo estás?
Chanchakwil.
Chanchakwil. How do you feel?
¿Cómo te sientes?
Chankru Kwankat.
Chankru Kwankat.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Bantiosh.
Bantiosh.
Radio Kingston.
Many voices.
Muchas voces.
Many voices.
Many voices, one community.
Hi, I'm Lara.
I'm Lindsay.
I'm Jessie.
And I'm Amy. Join us Tuesday nights at 8 for the O Positive Radio Hour.
We highlight the wellness of the community and the health practitioners who provide it.
The art and the artists, the music and the musicians, all the many voices who make O Positive possible.
The anarchists who don't do anything. We just sit at home and lay around.
We feature past, present, and hopefully future O Positive alums. Are you listening, Regina Spektor? That's the O Positive Radio Hour here at Radio Kingston.
AM 1490, FM 1079.
And anytime at radiokingston.org.
At Kingston Library and Half Moon Rondout Cafe are partnering again for another meeting of the Forgotten Favorites Book Club Saturday, April 6th. Based on the success of last year's Second Chance Book Club, this year the theme of the club is Forgotten Favorites. You'll discuss a novel that has been nearly lost to time and discuss whether its time has come and gone or if it deserves a word-of-mouth revival. Either way, you'll enjoy coffee, baked goods, in the company of your peers. April's book is The Expendable Man by Dorothy B. Hughes. Forgotten Favorites Book Club Saturday, April 6th at 2 p.m. at Half Moon Rondout Cafe, 42 Broadway in Kingston, New York. For more information, kingstonlibrary.org. Welcome back to The Long Way Round. I'm your host, Malcolm Byrne. My very special guest tonight is Rabbi Dovid Feldman, who's joining me from somewhere down, well, I don't know exactly where you are, but you're somewhere in the New York area.
I'm in Rockland County, Muncie, New York.
Ah, okay. Well, I know what that is. Yeah, sure. Before we took the break, I promised the audience that we would listen to this music that you had sent to us. Would you like to recite the words, or would you want me to do this?
It's up to you. I can tell you this. It's in traditional Hebrew, but I'll give it to you in English. In English, it's okay. In Hebrew, it is like this: Hashami Malkaini, v'lo yuni avudin. Teirusayni agdoishu chikosayni, v'lo heneni namunim. Eveshilten koifrem einoni makirim, evechikosayim einoni mischashvim. V'derech ha-toiru nailaich, v'aishu v'amayim, v'derech ha-toiru nailaich lekadash shem shemayim. And in English, as follows. The Almighty is our King, and to Him we are subservient. Our holy Torah is our law, and to it we are faithful. In the regime of the heretics we do not recognize, with its laws we do not reckon. In the path of the Torah we stride, in fire and in water. In the path of the Torah we stride to sanctify the name of the Almighty.
Thank you. Let's
and you know, once before you play it, let me just tell you the history of this song.
Sure. Yes, thank
This was written by Rabbi Amram Blau. He was the leader of Neturei Karta, our organization, our movement. He was a very strong anti-Zionist leader at the beginning of Zionism, passed away in the 1970s. He lived in Jerusalem and was an outspoken opponent to the movement of Zionism, to the state of Israel. And he was always encouraging not only Jews oppose the movement of Zionism, but come out in public and publicize this opposition to the world in order the world should see the true face of Judaism. He was very active. He was harassed, tortured by the Israeli government all the years. He was spending time in prison so many times. And this song he wrote while he was in Israeli prison. And what he said once to one of the great religious Jewish leaders in Jerusalem at the time, he said that when he is in prison, he feels much more comfortable. Why? Because when he's out in the free, he has so much obligation to oppose Zionism, and he's not sure whether he completes his duty to God to oppose them enough. When he's under bars, he has no choice, and there's nothing he can do. So he's definitely righteous with God.
Okay. I can understand that completely. I've never been in prison, but I can understand the sentiment entirely. All right, here we go. Well, that's the end.
Now, let me just clarify though, that last sentence, the very strong one, was Lekadosh Shem Shemaim, to sanctify God's name.
Okay.
That's how the song ends.
It's great because it's so uplifting and joyous sounding, but it's such a serious message. It's a good technique. Yeah, that works. For those who may be just joining me, I'm on the Zoom call here with Rabbi Dovid Feldman, and I suppose I have so many questions, really, but one question I suppose, because for anyone, well, nobody can see this right now, but I'm looking at a gentleman who's wearing traditional Orthodox garb, but you're also wearing a kufiya and a Palestinian flag, and it's almost like a walking contradiction for most people. But as I understand more and more from what you're saying, it's not a contradiction at all. It's only because of the propaganda that it's ingrained in our minds. And that's something that the Israelism film really, really, really displayed, was how heavily brainwashed people can be by this kind of thing.
Let me say, it's not only that this is not a contradiction. It's on the contrary. For a Jewish person to be Zionist is the greatest contradiction. For a Jewish person to raise an Israeli flag is a true contradiction in its essence. If any religious person would hold a sign, "I'm a heretic," is a contradiction, isn't it? If any religious person will proclaim that he promotes violence and crimes, this is a contradiction of him being religious in any way possible. Being Palestinian, we have so many people, I have so many close friends who are Jewish by religion and are Palestinians according to their nationality. As I'm an American Jew, as there can be an Iraqi Jew, and there are so many Palestinian Jews. Those people, many of those people, lived in Palestine for generations. I have a very close friend in my town where I live, basically more than one, who are 8 generations Palestinians. Their grandparents lived in Palestine way before 1948, way before the Zionist movement, and they have all beautiful stories about Palestine. They have so many beautiful stories how they were treated in Palestine, how beautifully and nicely. They would love to go back to that the old history of Palestine, and they are so upset to what was done to their people, the Jewish people, and to the Palestinian neighbors, how everything was destroyed, and it happens to be so many people left. So many Palestinian Jews left Palestine because they no longer can take this evil, unjust approach to their neighbors, and they just don't want to have this being done in their name. This is very sad. It's very destructive. It's so dangerous, not only to the Palestinian people. You know, as we see today, you know, this genocide going on in Gaza now is so wrong when it's being done to the Palestinian people. But in the same time, people don't realize how wrong this is to the Jewish people, how dangerous this is to the Jewish people. Unfortunately, people see what's going on, whether they are Palestinian people, those people who are affected from this occupation, or any other people. They think that all Jews support all of this, and at the end of the day, all Jewish people become accountable to all crimes being committed by some on our account.
Well, I think it was you in one of your interviews that I watched where you said or expressed or the opinion, and it was actually expressed last night at the screening of Israelism, because much of the audience were Jewish Americans. And someone spoke up and said the same thing. I think it was you said that what's happening is making the world unsafe for Jewish people because, at the same time, there's not a distinction in the public's mind between Zionism, Israel, and being a Jewish person. Wherever you be in China and be Jewish, you can be in Russia and be Jewish, you can be in Israel, America, Puerto Rico, it doesn't matter, but it doesn't, so they express that great concern. And, that's the sort of the diabolical sort of almost self-fulfilling prophecy of what's, the Zionists are doing, it's like make everybody afraid. You have to be in Israel. And I think it was also used, like said, why would I want to live in a country like Israel? Everybody has guns. It's like living in a fortress. It's not very, it's like, I feel the least comfort.
I always say not only that Israel is not the savior for the Jewish people, it is the greatest danger in our day and age for the Jewish people. Yes, there is anti-Semitism as a true concept, which is very old. But unfortunately, so much hatred is being directed to Jewish people today just because of what is being done in the name of all Jews. And I was interviewed at a demonstration a couple of weeks ago. It was a demonstration about the genocide in Gaza. And then that American reporter approaches me and asks me what I have to say to the Jewish students on college campuses in the United States that claim that they're facing hatred and they feel in danger on college campuses. And what I said is, I don't see any threat to Jewish people just because they are Jewish. If the individual Jewish person insists to raise an Israeli flag and insists to publicly say, yes, I'm the criminal and I'm the enemy, unfortunately, people will have some guilt feeling about that individual. Not that I'm so happy that that's so, but unfortunately, this is the consequence that every right-minded person should expect. And again, I'm not happy about it, but on the contrary, I'm so sad. But if you disassociate, if you do associate with Israel, then, that's the choice of the individual. But then you have to be realistic and be ready to face the consequence. Other Jewish people like myself disassociate from the movement of Zionism. I refuse to raise an Israeli flag, and I publicly oppose all what's being done. And guess what? Everybody loves me. Nobody hates me. I can visit Gaza. I can join a pro-Palestinian demonstration. No one ever will say to me a bad word. And if some people will misunderstand who I am, then it'll take a minute or two to explain. But that's all that it needs.
Well, you're very good.
Nobody hates.
You're very good. I've watched you. You always keep your level head and speak very calmly and organized, and it's very effective what you're doing. I must congratulate you for that. But I wanted to ask you though. I mean, do you get like how to, for example, like. Do you ever get any negative feelings from your own?
Well,
from other, like at a typical, like a regular person, just New York Jewish person who has been brought up over their families, Holocaust survivors. They look at Israel as a safe place, blah, blah, blah. Right. What are you doing? Why are you a traitor or something?
Right. Let me try to divide this into segments. The non-Jewish community, I almost never have an issue. Everybody will understand this very, very quickly. Even people that are unfamiliar, it doesn't take a lot for a person to understand what's going on and to understand, the difference between Judaism and Zionism. It's very easy to explain. Yes, those people who are brought up pro-Zionist, it's embarrassing to say and to see how closed-minded people can be in our day and age. We should expect people to be way more open-minded. And people are so closed-minded and so brainwashed. It's unbelievable. And that's why I have to say, as on a side note, I always say that so many people I consider innocent because they know nothing better. They, you know, if you are Jewish, then you have to support Israel. Otherwise, as you say, the traitor of the Jewish people. And unfortunately, many of those people don't even have the ability of overcoming this propaganda. We are trying our best, and we are very successful, and we are happy to open the minds of many people. But there is still so many people who would not only not be able to understand it, but they'll be so upset. That said, we have so much support within the Jewish communities. You can imagine that we would never be able to do what we are doing unless we have this massive support from so many people. And it happens to be those people who have difficulties to raise their voice in public, but they will do everything they can to support. And I'll tell you this little story. I once met a gentleman. He was one of the, you might even know the name, I'm not going to mention it, in Manhattan, New York City, one of the huge Jewish companies. And he once came over to me and he said, I'll do everything I can to support you, but there's no way I can come out in public, join you. If I join you, they take a picture of me, I close down the business in the same day. So many people are in the same situation. But so many people are so upset with this Zionist misrepresentation of Judaism, and they do everything they can to support an alternative.
Well, it's interesting. I have a friend, a very good musician actually, who lives in Israel, and we've known each other and worked together on various occasions, and I respect him very much. But we were communicating, and I said, you know, I just happened to mention in one of our emails back and forth, I said, you know, there's a lot of young people in America and around the world that are really not comfortable with what's happening right now and do not support this. And he said, no, that's not really true. That's not really true. I think he might have meant most young people in Israel, not most people in the rest of the world. I mean, I don't know. I've never been to Israel. I don't know. I shouldn't speak out of place, but I had to contradict him on that idea, that because I see so many young people, and so many of the young people that I interact with are Jewish Americans, young Jewish Americans. And actually in the Israelism film, what's his name? The guy, the head of AIPAC, he says, oh, you know,
Abe Foxman.
Abe Foxman. Foxman. He says, well, we've lost the young people. I think that's the opposite. They're discovering the truth.
And it's even in Israel, you know, there's that movement, break the silence, from ex-Israeli soldiers. People are waking up, you know, but there's a limit how long evil can succeed. There's a limit how much injustice people will tolerate. And there's a limit how much one can violate the word of Almighty God. You know, God gives a free choice for the individual to choose life or death, choose righteousness or wickedness, but there is a limit. There's a limit, and you know, God forbid nothing should happen. But we have reached we have reached a level which is, unfortunately, this cannot succeed anymore, because this is over all limits.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's still shocking, though, how few of our own politicians in this country and in other countries, I'm Canadian by birth, will not use the genocide word when they speak publicly. In fact, we only have two members of Congress, I think Rashida Tlaib, who's actually Palestinian, and then AOC just finally said something after she was confronted by some young people outside of a movie theater in Manhattan, and finally she came out. And people will argue, well, she's going to lose her seat in 5 minutes now because of that. But hey, at least in history, she's going to be looked upon as on the right side.
Yeah, but listen, this intimidation of forcing one's opinion, this is not right. This is not logic. If this is the way how you control righteousness and evil, by force and by intimidation and by this should be unacceptable.
I agree. I mean, it didn't work for the Nazis, and it's not going to work in this occasion either, I think. Well, we're almost out of time, Dovid, and I would. It's so fascinating, and I could sit and talk to you for hours, and I would love to be able to continue this discussion. But before I let you go, I'd like you to maybe finalize with just a few words that perhaps we didn't discuss, or you would like to say, just to put a point to it.
In short, to wrap everything up in short is as follows. The movement of Zionism does not represent Judaism. On the contrary, it is the total contrast of Judaism, even before any crimes being committed to anyone. When this happens in Palestine, it is not only a crime in international law, these are true crimes in Judaism. There is no way that the movement of Zionism represents Judaism as a religion, and in no way does the state of Israel and its actions represent the Jewish people. People need to understand that whatever is taking place in Palestine, these crimes committed needs to stop. And this needs to stop not only for the sake of the suffering Palestinian people who deserve freedom, who deserve justice, but for the sake of the Jewish people who are against their will dragged into this conflict and should not be responsible for the actions of the state of Israel. Human beings, well, Jewish people certainly have the obligation of speaking up because sadly, all of this is being done supposedly in our name. But you don't have to be Palestinian, suffering people, to condemn all what is taking place. You don't have to be Jewish and things should be done in your name to speak up and to say no, not in our name. You just have to be human, to do everything you can while we are witnessing. Today, regardless in which part of the world you live, you are a witness to what is taking place. You are seeing what's going on, even if you only see a part of the news, even if you are not exposed to real facts, what is taking place, you still know that something wrong is going on. And you should do everything you can to stop this, at least raise a voice, join a demonstration, do something, and never be intimidated. Mm-hmm. That speaking up against Israel is anti-Semitic in any way. I can only suggest that people should be, it's embarrassing to say this, but unfortunately, because of this massive propaganda, we have to clarify that we have nothing against the Jewish people. We never had. Crimes that are being done, regardless who the people perpetrating the crimes are, this has to stop. If a person crosses a red light and causes a danger, that person has to be stopped, regardless if he is religious or not, regardless whether he is Jewish or any other faith. Mm-hmm. A crime has to be stopped, and we should never be intimidated. Yes, we should have our minds set rightly and correctly. We shouldn't fall into this Zionist propaganda, and this is a whole conversation in itself. Don't we fall into Zionist propaganda to believe that Judaism and Zionism is one and the same? Because what the Zionist propaganda wants to do is to confuse the two in order to make you anti-Semitic if you oppose Zionism. Mm-hmm. And we should never allow this. We should separate the two and condemn whatever is wrong while we still respect Jewish people and the Jewish religion. We have to be very clear about this, because otherwise we fall into the trap, and we not only allow crimes to be committed to the Palestinian people, we allow the consequences of Zionism to blame all Jews. to what is taking place. And this, all of this is unfair, is unjust, is not in favor of anyone. And I have to end with this. The state of Israel, or the movement of Zionism, is not here for the favor, safety, or security of the Jewish people. The Jewish people can be protected under Palestinians or under any other Muslim people. It is the political nationalism of Zionism which is being promoted, and everything is being done to preserve this movement, which happens to be an anti-Jewish movement, happens to be a criminal movement, and happens to have so much wrongdoings to it. But it's nothing about the people, it's about a national movement. And we have to remember that.
Thank you so much. It's very eloquently put, and I'm so glad to hear this. Thank you so much for your time, sure, Rabbi Feldman, and shalom, peace be with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity, and I'm so glad to speak to your audience. And people deserve to know better than mainstream media presents to them.
Thank you. Oh, maybe I'll see you out at a demonstration somewhere.
Sure, sure. Thank you very much. Nice meeting you.
Be well. Thanks so much for your time.
Sure.